Welcome back to the Scare Stiff Podcast. This is your host, Mike, and my co-host, Scott. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm not going to lie. I had a rough start to my day, but this is a good end to it.
I can definitely agree on both of those points.
This is the film you wanted me to watch, so you please introduce it.
So this is The Burning, which is one of the premier slashers of the 80s. And I've been kind of trying to beg Scott to watch this for like 3 years. And we finally found an excuse to do it this week.
And it's not from a place of not caring or not wanting
No,
to see
you just
it.
didn't have it.
Yeah, and I got it, knew that we were going to watch this at some point on the podcast, and I was looking forward to it. And I had a fantastic time. I loved the movie. I think we're going to start off with something you said not too long ago, because you talk about how 81 was a golden year for like horror films. You've mentioned this in the American Werewolf episode because that came out in 81. We talk about The Howling in the last episode, which is also 81, as was this film and another film we talked about a few weeks back, Friday Part 2. So yes. 81 is very prominent for horror. You
Funnily
could say
enough,
it's a golden age for horror in general.
Yeah. I mean, like, the 80s in general are a second coming for horror. But 81 saw the release of a lot of big films, particularly franchise films, but also original films.
Also camp films.
Yeah, apparently camp films. But, you had titans of the genre released this year. You had movies like The Evil Dead. You had Halloween 2 finally releasing in 81. You had Friday Part 2. You had The Burning. You had American Werewolf. You had fucking
The Howling.
You had
Valentine.
My Bloody Valentine. The Prowler.
Madman, another American classic.
You know
we're gonna have to watch this at some point because we've mentioned it in like at least 4 episodes.
I definitely didn't want to bring that one up, but actually we will talk about Madman in this episode.
We have to,
for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But also one like little known ones like Dark Knight of the Scarecrow, which was a TV slasher, which was really awesome. There was a lot. Dead and Buried, The Funhouse, Wolfen, Hell Night. There's so many. The Prowler. I said The Prowler. There's so many big. I guess some of them are not the biggest films. Like The Burning is a movie that is known very well within the slasher community, but
it's
I would
big
argue
in abundance though. Like all these coming out the same year. Like, that's 100%. What makes it so big. Yes, American Werewolf is a fantastic, popular film, and maybe The Burning's not as popular, but knowing that this all came out in 81 made 81 ridiculous. It's a year that it's unfortunate we couldn't live through because of all these films being released.
Yeah, and I would argue, even within just the subgenre of slashers, I would say The Burning would almost be called a B-tier slasher, and that's not quality-wise, because it is one of the best slashers ever made, in my opinion. But as far as like public knowledge is concerned, I would say it's probably a B-tier slasher, because this is not going to be put in the same recognizability as Halloween or Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, all the big franchises. But that's kind of the fun part about it, because it's kind of a misnomer. It's kind of an unknown kind of movie. It's it's a step above something like a Sleepaway Camp, which I would say is probably a C tier for most people's knowledge.
I think there's so much to talk about in this, and I want to talk about a lot of these things. I want to talk about a lot of the background knowledge and a lot of the stuff that sets up how the movie's going to go, the background information that lends to why this film was made. But we should definitely talk about the synopsis of the film first, what happens, the background, and then we'll get onto that stuff. It's just I'm really excited to mention some things, talk about some debatable
not so great parts, but yeah. So The Burning is about it's basically what you think of. If you went to camps as a kid, you probably heard the story of Cropsy, but it's all about a man who gets burnt beyond recognition, who at a camp, who comes back to take vengeance upon the camp. Pretty simple premise, but it lends to some just amazing sequences. And I like the fact that this is a slasher. You get your kills, you get your normal staples of the slasher genre, but you also get a pretty legit camp movie too.
Yes.
Like, I would say that more so because we were talking about you and I were talking about Fear Street Part 2.
Yes.
And how that's like Friday 13th Part 2 meets, or Friday 13th in general, meets Meatballs. Now I would walk that back and say I think that Fear Street Part 2 is The Burning meets Meatballs in sheer viciousness, especially.
I think it's more about
but because they focus on camp stuff,
like because it gets a lot of aspects about Friday with the way some of the characters are portrayed, the way that follows like the killer more in some aspects, and I think the intensity is like The Burning. The camp setting is more like The Burning because it follows the teenagers a lot. Yeah. And I think the movie's awesome. I love the teenagers in this movie. I love the characters in the movie. When someone dies, you're like, that fucking sucks. You know, I hate that.
Yeah, there's very few characters in this movie that die where I'm like, that.
Unless they're deserving to die.
Yeah,
and they build that up a few times.
Yeah, they very distinctly have at least two characters in this movie. I would say that most people that are designed for you not to like, but none of the stuff that they do is ever portrayed as good. You gotta give that kind of credit.
I know that Savini does the effects in this movie, as he did on the first one,
and part 4.
And 4, of course. He says he did The Burning instead of doing Friday Part 2. He said
which is funny
to do this one.
Which is funny considering what he said on the Friday documentary.
I don't know if I believe him in any aspect. He kind of just follows around why he did this or what happened or whatever. But regardless of that, his interview on The Burning Blu-ray has me convinced he hasn't watched any of them besides the first. And maybe the fourth because he used it. He was in that, obviously.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Because we know in The Burning, first of all, I'll say in The Burning, there are at least two characters you're supposed to hate. So when they die, you feel like, yeah, fuck him, right? At least two characters. Maybe there's more you don't like. I don't know. I wouldn't agree.
I only counted 2.
I would say it's just 2. There's a good hero that you're supposed to follow because he does show that he cares about his kids. And then there's the weird kid who's very much like the Cropsey killer, who very much gets shit on, and you know, because he has that hero character to help him out, he saves the day. You know, that's the whole moral of the story. If you have friends, you know, you can change who you are pretty much. It's cool.
Very camp feeling, you know, one of those kind of, you know, sing around the fire camp song kind of things.
Yeah. Would you say there's any real likable characters in the first Friday the 13th? Really likable characters. I don't mean just like, oh yeah, he's cool or whatever.
Oh, Crosby's son.
Yes, I like him.
I'll say,
but he's barely in it.
Like likable presences, sure, but as far as like actually like likable full-on characters that you watch interact consistently and have fun with, no, not really.
That's the thing. Like he's got a great charisma to him, but
it's
not
Kevin
the dialogue.
Bacon, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
But besides that, there's not a huge likability to this cast. Like Kevin Bacon's got a charisma to him, but he's an asshole. You know.
Yeah.
Alice is a nice girl, but you don't know much about her. There's not enough dialogue that makes you feel like, I need to know more for Alice. You just don't want her to die because you're like, God, it kind of sucks if she dies for nothing. But in this movie, there's a whole lot of likable characters. There are 2 characters that are purposely not likable. Savini says on the Blu-ray, you know, The Burning's different than Friday. You know, when you're watching Friday, you want these kids to die. You're like, I wish I could all die right away. But in The Burning, you don't feel that way. And I sat there and I literally said out loud, is he fucking stupid? Like, even the one he worked on afterwards, Part 4, there's likable fucking characters, man. Like,
yeah, most of them are likable.
Like, if you put this next to Part 2 of Friday, there are more likable characters in Part 2, realistically. I'm not saying they're better characters. Don't get me wrong. There are at least 2 unlikable characters in The Burning that you're supposed to not like.
Yes.
Name 2 in Part 2 that you're not supposed to like. You could say, I don't like Scott because he's a bit of a fucking pervert.
You could argue he's the guy that you're probably not supposed to like the most.
Yes.
I guess you could argue that the two lovers that go to Crystal Lake are kind of like stupid for going there, but you also can just blame that on them being teenagers.
Are they any dumber than any of the teenagers in The Burning, though? Because Jeff has shown a scene where he's sympathetic towards his actions when he defends Paul to the police. Yeah. If you want to take dialogue written in the movie, you can see sympathy towards these characters. They may be teenagers and get into some dumb shit. He fuck around, he cheats against Mark. Like, fine, but they're not unlikable characters. If you're listening to the dialogue and following the movie, they're not supposed to be unlikable.
Yeah.
It's like the same as The Burning. These films came out the same year.
I would argue that there's not more likable characters in Friday than in The Burning, because there's only 2 characters that you're not supposed to like. There's more characters in The Burning.
There are more.
And there's more likable presences in The Burning because there's more characters. It's not really fair. The cast is larger.
The cast is larger, but
overall well-drawn
there are some
characters.
people that die in The Burning that don't have any real dialogue or have any scenes.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the bigger girl who pushes, the douchebag bully, she doesn't actually have dialogue. A few of the girls don't have any real dialogue besides just saying shit. And that's fine. They're perfect because they're talking together. A lot of the banter feels so organic, like it's kids having fun. And that's the best part about the movie. You never feel like these kids are being scripted, just saying some shit that doesn't make sense. The dialogue is very natural because these kids are just saying whatever the fuck they want, and I like that.
They're often featured extras.
Yeah, and they die. It's really no different, though, when you think about the extras in the beginning that don't come back to the camp in part 2 in Packanack.
Yeah.
A lot of those characters are the exact same way, except they don't join and stay at the camp, and they don't become cannon fodder.
Yeah.
I would say it's very similar. I'm not saying part 2 is better. I'm just saying that statement is fucking dumb.
No, I mean, you're preaching to the choir. That's my favorite Friday movie.
Yeah,
so.
like, I just think these are both coming out in 81. They're very similar.
Yeah.
They talk about the legend of Jason, the same thing as Legend of Cropsey, at like pretty much in the same exact place in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, the opening where Cropsey gets burned is very similar to like showing what happened in the last movie about Jason and everything, and building up to him killing Alice.
And Jason's mom
yes.
dying.
So a lot of these films are very similar. And I'd have to assume that people that are working on each of these films are like passing notes or something in class, because there's so many similarities. There's a lot of similarities in Mad Men too, but in Mad Men it really does just come down to it's in the fucking woods. We talk about the legend, and then that shit's just its own thing.
I would argue though that a lot of the way that these, especially between the Friday movies, this has similarities to it is because they're both based on camp culture.
Yes.
And, you know, obviously talking about, scary stories around the campfire, that's something that's just like, that's natural. It happens at camp all the time. And it seems like something that you would think would make the movie less interesting, because it's something that we've seen before in a high profile franchise.
Well delivered.
Exactly. That's why, like, everybody always talks about how, like, slashers are formulaic, or literally any genre you want to talk about being formulaic.
Yes,
but as long as the formula,
they
get it. Well, horror gets it a lot, but slashers get it all the time. It's like, oh, it's just the same thing over and over again. But if it's well executed, I don't give a fuck, dude. If there's characters I like, I don't give a fuck. And The Burning has that for days. Again, only 2 characters that are not likable, and they are deliberately unlikable. Unlike someone like maybe in part 4, like
Ted, who's not likable, but it's not intentionally deliberate. I feel.
Like, he's supposed to be an asshole, but they're trying to portray him as the kind of like likable dick, and he's not a likable dick. He's just a dick. So these people, they're like, one of them's a bully.
Yeah,
and
he's
one of them
to be a bully. Yeah.
And one of them is very, very handsy and misogynistic, and
Predatorial.
they are both portrayed that way, and neither one of them gets away with that.
They both get scenes where their deaths elongate compared
brutal.
to other deaths too.
Yeah, their deaths are
so they
brutal.
get their just desserts.
Actually, technically, they both die the same way. They both get the hedge clippers in the neck.
Yeah, I just think that statement by Savini is really fucking ridiculous. The only difference The Burning has is the main character has an actual history with the killer. That's the biggest edge this movie has over part 2.
And it's something that when you know that fact, because obviously they don't really reveal that till the end.
Well, I mean, if you pay attention at the beginning.
Yeah, but most people are kind of just when they're watching movies at the beginning, so they bring it back around at the end.
Well, when you watched it the first time, did you see that coming?
I honestly don't remember ever hearing his name at the beginning.
I'll say this much: I didn't know he was one of the older men that, like, in the scene that was responsible. I thought he was the younger kid with the glasses. but I knew he was one of the ones responsible, especially because he says to Alfred, like, 5 years ago, I got kicked out of camp. I'm like, you got kicked out of camp because you fucking burned someone alive, bro. Yeah. Like, it's a little different than being a weirdo.
I was kind of one of the things I am a little bit unclear about in this movie sometimes is how old certain characters are.
Yeah, are they counselors?
Because like how old is fucking what's his name? The bully.
Oh, the bully. Dude, he's
Eddie's same age as Todd. You can tell that they're both because they put him like take charge kind of,
The bully has to be the same age.
That's my thing though, because I looked at the bully because he's blonde.
Yeah.
I thought he was the fucking nerd at the beginning.
Oh, really?
I thought that was going to be his whole thing, was like he's involved in that situation and that kind of trauma of having been part of the stuff with Cropsy turned him into an asshole to kind of like repress those feelings, which I thought would have been fascinating if they did that, but they didn't do it. It's just me speculating and drawing different conclusions, but it's obviously there's nothing there to support it. I just thought that'd be funny.
It'd be cool if they redid the movie, they did a reboot, and they just hit at that. Because I thought the kid with the glasses was just gonna be Ty. Like, he could dye his hair black. Who fucking cares? Because that kid's the only kid who hesitates.
Yeah, they focus on him deliberately.
Yeah.
But also, I think that's kind of smart.
It is because it's not him.
Yeah, because they divert attention from him because the guy that we like so much, Todd, was like gung-ho about it. It's like, yes, I want to fucking scare the shit out of this guy. Yeah. So it flips it on its head, and it actually makes it more interesting.
See, the best thing about the backstory in this movie too is that he says that Cropsy was a fucking piece of shit. He's abusive. He's sadistic. It's like, yeah, it's a good thing that's in there because you're looking like a real piece of shit.
Yeah, otherwise it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Well, they specify like how he's an alcoholic and
yes,
he's a fucked up individual. So it's like you don't feel too bad when it happens. Also, now that I've grown up and I've seen stuff, because obviously I've seen stuff before this that are kind of reminiscent of it. Something about this really reminded me of Hatchet. I don't know if you've seen Hatchet. Yeah, it something about Victor Crowley's origin and Cropsy's origin kind of reminds me of each other. I don't know if maybe Victor Crowley's inspired by the Cropsy legend or what.
I think the design is.
Yeah, he's fucking horrifying. he's definitely inspired by, I would say, Cropsy and Jason.
Yes.
Because you can see in his face how fucked up, like his fucked up face looks a lot like what you'd picture, honestly, what you would picture Hillbilly Jason from Part 2 looking like.
Yeah, well, I was going to say specifically Part 2.
Yeah. Hatchet's interesting. Don't know how much you would enjoy that. It's definitely a meta slasher. But
I definitely like the best aspect about this movie is the camp setting, is the camp kids and everything. They're all likable. They're all fun. So at the end of the last episode, I told you, why do I keep forgetting his name? From Seinfeld. Oh, George Costanza.
How did you like George Costanza?
He's awesome.
He's my favorite he might be my favorite character in the movie. He doesn't even really get that much to do. But every time that he interacts with someone, it is fucking gold.
Yeah, I biasly liked some of the other kids a little bit more because they're just like likable and they're fun and they're just weaselly. Like, I like Woodstock a lot, but Costanza's so funny. Like, they knew they picked up a fucking comedian. They're like, I'm not writing him a script. Like,
yeah, he's
do what
so
you
funny.
Want. His delivery is the same as Seinfeld. It's the exact same.
Yeah.
The way he sets up jokes, the way he fucking just punches in and just gives his natural charisma. He's so fucking funny.
He has this sarcastic New York air about him that's really funny.
There's never a scene where someone gives him shit where you feel like he's not gonna win in this dialogue debate right now. He's gonna fuck you guys up.
He even dunks the fuck out of the bully.
Dude, I love the scene with the bully where they shoot him in the ass with the pellet gun. It's so funny.
Oh my god.
They all fucking drop trow and moon him. It's so good.
See, that's kind of my thing. Is like, this is a slasher movie, obviously. There's kills galore. And we'll get to those because one of those in particular might be one of the greatest sequences in the history of slasher movies. But they take a lot of time to just be a camp movie.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, there's between like the first kill, that prostitute, and the next kill, it felt like it might have been like 30 minutes.
I'd say it's got to be at least 30 minutes. It feels
So it's
like
like
a long time.
they take time to just immerse you in with these people and just get you having a good time. So when people start dropping like flies, it's really, really tense. And of course, also they bring in like a not just like a normal slasher or a normal camp slasher, but it's also like a survival slasher.
It's also
something
like a giallo.
Yeah, something like Just Before Dawn, where it's like they're not only being chased around by a killer, but they're stranded away from the camp because he took their canoes, which is genius.
The best thing about this movie is just that they take so many hints from other genres and then they just utilize every aspect of it.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head because that first kill is straight up giallo.
Oh yeah.
I mean, but he wears gloves the entire time too, so when he's grabbing people and stuff, like it really does feel almost
well when
like
he's chasing Alfred and he grabs him by the neck, pulls him in.
Yeah, drags him in and then pins him to the wall with the hedge clippers. That is really evocative of giallo movies.
Yes.
I don't know if that was intentional. I would assume it's intentional.
It has, especially with the way he looks at people too, and it's got like the lens is a little deteriorated. It reminds me of like a lot of scenes in Deep Red.
Yeah, I also like that they use that to differentiate because they do use a lot of handheld camera work in this, which can be easily misconstrued as POV camera, but it's only POV when it has the kind of like fucked up filter over the lens, so they differentiate those shots very easily. Because I could see someone kind of being confused, like towards the end when Alfred, his name's Alfred. I always want to say Alfredo, but Alfred is running around in those concrete structures, and they're standing on top of the concrete wall and they're shooting down at him. That could be easily misconstrued as a POV shot, but it's not a POV shot. So I really like that they do differentiate because there are some movies where they kind of forget about that. So you would expect the handheld sequence to be a POV shot, but it's not a POV shot. So I do like that. The director did a fucking kick-ass job with this movie. I've never heard of him.
There is no sequels, I assume. No.
They set it
this
up.
Movie sets up sequels pretty easily with the ending.
It sets it up as a potential franchise. I'm glad it's not a franchise. I mean, I don't really think you could really ruin it. I don't think you could really ruin it if you made it into a franchise. But it is kind of cool to just have like this isolated slasher film.
I like it that it's isolated because when it ended that way, I was very conflicted. Because when he says like the body was never found, I'm like, get the fuck out of here. The body was never found. Maybe because it's Ash, bro. But
well, see, that's kind of the whole thing, though. It's like it's a camp legend, so they're just gonna spin it how they want to make it scary for the camp counselors, and that leaves you open to create new stories with the character of Cropsy. Did they happen? Did they not happen? Did this one even happen? We don't fucking know. I find that fascinating. This could have been a pretty interesting
I think it's a fantastic
franchise.
end. It makes you as a viewer wonder, how would it go about? Because I can think to myself, I'm glad that it's isolated. I'm sick of seeing the same old shit. If they made more of these, it definitely wouldn't have held up well. But at the same time, it's like, you could definitely get a lot more out of this, though.
There's definitely a way you could attack this concept and make it into a cool franchise.
The only problem is that I wouldn't want to bring back any of the cast, but having that main character linked to the Cropsy legend is great.
Yeah,
but at the same time,
you
got 4 or 5 other characters you could have followed that also did that.
Yeah.
So I think there could have been some cool shit to do, but I like the way the movie plays out. I like it being singular, but is it a bit of a missed opportunity? In some aspects, yes. In some aspects, no. That's kind of cool about it.
It's like I'm glad this is its own thing. The same way that I'm glad that we never got a sequel to My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah.
Like we just got the remake, because that movie ends really well, and I feel like if you made that a franchise, it would kind of taint that. The director of it was talking not too long ago about making another like a years on sequel to My Bloody Valentine, and I'm like, please don't.
I think we talked about it in the last episode about, hey, bring back some of these franchises, and it's cool. Like, oh, how would you bring Friday back? There's something about bringing back staple franchises that kind of have to come back to keep the legacy going. Just the same way you have to bring back Frankenstein, you have to bring back Wolfman, you have to bring back The Mummy. Dracula.
People bitch and complain about bringing back franchises, but the reason why people like if you bring back franchises, it leaves the door open. You know, it seeds the market, I guess you could say, for smaller, independent or lower budgeted, more interesting films to have a place to go so that they can guarantee that they have a market for themselves. So bringing back Halloween is a good thing.
That's a thing.
For other horror movies.
If we never brought back Halloween, the idea of having another slasher in 10 years is literally 40% lower.
Yeah.
If you don't have one going around saying we can still do it, they're never going to do it. I'm not saying it'd be impossible, but it's a lot tougher. And we need to showcase that we can bring back this genre. There's still some things to do. There's still some fun to be had. Why the fuck don't we do it? I think you have to bring back the staples back, just like you have to bring back, like I said, the original Universal monsters. I'm not saying Universal has to do it, but if I said, hey man, you've heard of Dracula before, you could say, fuck yeah, I have. Now if I said, what do you know Dracula most for? Are most people going to say, I read the book? Probably not. Am I saying that's a good thing? No, I'm not. You should always check out the original material. You should go read it if you want to like get into that world and see what it came from. But most people are going to say, hey, I may have watched Horror of Dracula. I may have watched Bram Stoker's Dracula. I may have watched, the Universal Monsters Dracula. There's so many different ways you could say, I watched this. Dude, I watched him in fucking Scooby-Doo. I watched him in fucking Alvin and the Chipmunks for Frankenstein or something. There's so many different ways to get introduced to these characters.
Oh, man. You reminded me about that fucking movie, Alvin and the Chipmunks. Fucking fire, dude. I watched that movie so much as a kid. Alvin and the Chipmunks meet Frankenstein is awesome.
It is awesome. But there's so many ways to get introduced to these characters. And the only reason people still know about these characters is because they're constantly making it, constantly. If Dracula's not going to be around for 60 years, the odds of him coming back, minuscule. I'm sorry. Oh, dude, but he's so popular. Doesn't matter, man. It doesn't matter. You have to keep that popularity running. Yeah. It's the same way, like, Batman's always popular, too, and he's always got a movie on right now. If he was away from movies for 50 years, he's still popular because there's still material getting printed out. There's still going to be an animated show. There could still be comics coming out. There's always something with the character's name in it. Toys especially.
Yeah.
Really especially. But especially with McFarlane. But you need something coming out with this character, constantly putting their name in there saying, hey dude, check that shit out. Oh yeah, I'm going to indulge in this. Yeah. We are not getting enough of that for a lot of horror characters. The only reason we are sometimes is like, hey, Shudder put this on. I haven't seen this. Oh, this fucking slaps though? And then you like it. And you're saying, hey, I haven't seen this for 20 fucking years. Now I'm seeing it. Now I'm loving it. Or Scream Factory's like, hey, this movie you haven't seen before but was really popular 10 years ago. We made a Blu-ray. Oh, fuck, a banger though? Damn, now you like this movie. We need more of that shit. Or maybe make a reboot, maybe make a new series or something just to keep people interested. Remember the name, continue the essence, and here we go.
I remember when I talked about, we're going to talk about slashers, like I remember talking about, I just watched My Bloody Valentine. And someone's like, oh, the movie with Jensen Ackles. I'm like, no, not that movie.
But at least they can say that.
Yeah, at least it's something that people generally know. It's kind of funny because that movie made a pretty decent chunk of change.
Oh yeah, especially because when I think of 3D movies in that year, I think of that movie.
Especially because when I think of 3D movies I wish I actually saw in 3D, that's one of them.
I remember the trailer like it was fucking yesterday. When the axe gets thrown.
That's the scene, especially in that moment. I want to see that in 3D so badly.
I never watched the movie.
I feel like that was
but I know that trailer.
That honestly though, My Bloody Valentine's fun, but watch the original one first. The original one is much better, but I digress. It's kind of funny, like that is something that technically is kind of in pop culture.
Yeah.
Because there's a remake.
I know the image of the killer.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't know that that's not the first one. Because I've talked to a lot of people. I'll be like, yeah, I watched My Bloody Valentine's. Like, yeah, I saw that in theaters, and I'm like, you're my age.
Yeah.
You didn't see that in theaters. But
what if they're really fucking like they just went to some like fucking slummy area and they're like, yeah, they just play old fucking horror films, and you were just making an assumption.
No, it was
I know it's not the case, but like imagine.
I would laugh. I'm
Like, he
honestly
just
laugh.
fucking said you said in French, like, listen, dickwad, I happen to know this place down in fucking Brooklyn, and I love this movie.
First, I'd laugh. Second, I'd ask them, where is this motherfucking place, and let me go there now. Because I want to see a fucking goddamn slasher movie from the 80s on a big screen.
There is a place, actually, in our area that if you go to the horror fest, they tell you how, like, oh, once in a while we play, like, movies on a big inflated screen at like a beach or whatever, and it's kind of like a drive-in style.
Oh.
I haven't gone to it, but it's a lot of like horror classics and shit, and it's pretty cool, and I want to check it out.
I'm still twiddling my thumbs hoping that they put Halloween in the theaters again.
Well, we're gonna see Evil Dead in theaters.
Yep. Well, while we've been talking about The Burning and slasher movies and horror in general, I've been admiring your beautiful shirt that I'm very jealous of.
Yeah, so this is from Count Orlok's Nightmare Gallery. It's a wax museum in Salem, Massachusetts. I go probably 3-4 times a year at least, because we're Connecticut area, not
We're
too
not that
far
far
from
away.
Salem, about 2.5-3 hours usually, and I always go. This time, actually, the guy, because I went literally a month ago, like exactly a month ago. The guy's like, "Weren't you just here not that long ago?" I was like, it's been a month, man. He goes, "I'm just gonna give you guys the returning rate. Like, you come here all the time." I'm like, you know what? I fucking like that. And he's like, "Well, good thing too. We have one new sculpture up." I was like, "Oh, cool. It's gonna be something different. You wanna know what the new wax figure up?"
Is this gonna make me mad?
Yeah.
Oh no.
It's not horror. So it is technically horror, but it's in the 80s.
Michael J. Fox from Teen Wolf?
No, because I wouldn't
What?
consider that horror.
What?
It's horror, but it's sci-fi, mostly horror. You would say horror.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank here, bud.
T-800.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, that's 100% horror.
Well, that's
except
why I
no-
said you would 100% call it horror, but some people wouldn't.
I would definitely, I would not hesitate to say that it's definitely a horror movie. It's definitely a slasher movie.
But they have, to talk about the museum more.
That's kind of cool. That's
They
kind of
have
cool.
wax figures all the way from Nosferatu, Werewolf of London, which is more obscure.
Yeah.
London After Midnight, all the way up to stuff like they have the monster from Stranger Things, they have the nun, and everything in between. They have a whole section of fucking Bram Stoker's Dracula because there's so many designs in it.
Hey man, you know what?
The designs are cool.
Designs are sick, bro. I don't give a fuck.
I even
That's
gave the
pretty
guy not a piece of my mind, but I was like, "You got a lot of stuff from Dracula." He goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "I fucking hate that movie." He goes, "What?" I'm like, "I'm telling you as it is, man."
I've been going through Twitter, man, and I keep seeing people being like, I was reminded today that Bram Stoker's Dracula exists. That movie's fucking fire.
Yeah, you're reminded it
like-
exists. Why don't you watch the fucking movie, stupid?
I'm just like, good for you. I'm so glad you like it.
You see that? You see that difference right there? I was quick on the attack, and you're quick to pat the back. Like,
Well, I'm glad you like it. I'm also sorry you're wrong.
you want to know what else? So, you
It's
know how
fucking
last time
terrible.
I had my collection of masks I got? So
Yes.
I have. So this is my new collection right now of all of them. I got a lot here.
Holy shit.
So this is my half mask from last time. This is the part 3 NES game one. This is signed by Kane Hodder, the part 7 mask. Yeah, you get
Yep.
the little crack. This is a new one that we got.
Nice.
It's supposed to be styled after part 3, but also like little hints of like Jason
Damage.
X.
Yeah.
That's the one that I made because I'm a fucking toddler.
Nice clean white.
And then here's the one that I got too, which is based on part 6 because it doesn't have the lines on the side.
Nice.
So I have more for the collection.
You gonna go bring that with you when we go to the horror convention and get CJ Graham to sign that bitch?
You know what? I didn't think about it, but I am now. You better fucking believe I'm gonna find a way to meet Todd McLaughlin too this Halloween and get him to sign it as well.
Wait, is the con actually on Halloween?
Yes.
What the fuck?
It's Thursday. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's 29, 30, 31.
Oh, Halloween's on a Sunday?
Yep.
Fuck me. God damn it. I want to fall on a Saturday one of these times so I can just fucking
I think next
Marathon movies.
year will be Saturday.
fuck.
I'm not sure, but
Whatever. I'm just gonna
now that
spend
we're
the entire
talking
month
about
of
Friday,
October.
Let's segue
flipping
back
out.
back to The Burning.
Fuck yeah.
There's a lot of similarities between the two films. Savini's makeup. A lot of the kills are very similar to kills Savini would do in Friday as well.
So very early on, no, not that early on, because the real kills don't start until like 45 minutes in or something, but or 30 minutes in. But one of the first camp counselors, no, it was a counselor. One of the first people who dies at the camp gets her throat slit. It's only been a year. The quality of makeup effects from his first throat slit in Friday the 13th Part 1 to this is night and fucking day.
Well, just look at the stabbing through the throat as well.
Yeah, it all looks way better.
I think the Kevin Bacon scene is great. Some color grading, if it's made too high quality, will make it look bad.
Yeah, the 4K scan on the Screen Factory release was not kind to the makeup effects in general in that movie.
I think it was a lot better on the Scream Factory than the Blu-ray set you own, because the Blu-ray set is really bad.
Yeah, the fucking Paramount 8 Blu-ray set is ass, and they're re-releasing it.
But at the same time, the makeup for Eddie's death when he gets the shoot through the throat, the makeup is much better. I will say, as the scene lingers on, they show
false body.
They show different angles. I'm like, okay, his neck's looking pretty long right now.
Yeah.
It's not about the makeup, it's about just giraffe neck.
Yeah, I think the false body, it's not something that really takes away from the sequence to me, but when I look back at it, I'm like, yeah, the false body because he's obviously sticking his neck through a false body on the raft, is a little more obvious than it is.
I think it's only obvious in the last scene. The only problem I have with the kills in this movie, they indulge sometimes. Like, they know how good the kills are, and they show different angles, and it's like, that angle wasn't very kind, man. Or they show scenes later on where they have still frames of deaths. Like when they show the first counselor that dies, when he's in the fucking abandoned area. She's not hung up. Like, that's a still frame from when she died.
Yeah, I actually rewound it because I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, and it
looks like they literally just didn't have her that day, so they're like, well, we'll just composite in a shot of her. You can see the tree.
Yeah, it looks really bad.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Like, it's like there's little things.
There are little things.
Man, you were this close. Like, there's like little teeny things, like the false body thing. Like, it's so it is definitely indulgent. The raft scene in general, which we were gonna get to the raft scene in general. It's one of the greatest slasher sequences in the history of slashers, in my opinion. But there is definitely some indulgence there. I will still say though that the editing is really strong, and they jump around fast enough that, at least for me, as I'm watching the sequence, I'm not registering any of it.
No, the only reason I registered it is because they show the scene in the special effects special feature. Yeah. And they show exactly how it is in the movie. And when I'm looking at that effect specifically, I'm like, okay, the neck's a little long, but you're right, because everything's just happening so fast when you're watching the movie, you're not paying attention to it.
Funny thing, the editor of this movie, I hope I'm not outing myself as a dumbass right now. I'm 99% sure that the person who edited this movie is the director of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
You want me to look that up?
I'm very positive.
You're very positive?
I have...
Jack Shoulder? You're right.
Yes. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. I thought it was pretty cool. He's a good editor, man.
Yeah, I think the movie's well edited.
I think that...
Sometimes he does put too much random shit in, and at the end, when they show dead bodies when he's fighting.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bit much, but
yeah.
I think that's meant to be like that. It's in the script, I'm sure. So.
Yeah. When I was sitting there watching the raft scene, because I've seen this movie before. I don't know how you felt watching the raft scene, but when I was watching the raft scene for the second time, it still is absolutely just like heart pounding for me. Yeah. Because it starts like that. It just starts and it doesn't stop. And usually rapid editing irritates me, but holy shit does it work here, because he goes person to person. Every single strike is perfectly framed almost. Especially like the final hit, man, makes my heart pound. And then it fades to red instead of white like Friday does.
We'll go over two things. We'll talk about the build up to the scene, and then we'll talk about what we think is personally the best death in the scene. The build up starts with them seeing one of the canoes.
Yeah.
Immediately, there's only 2 responses you can have when you see the canoe. What is your first response when you saw the canoe? Assumably.
So I have to preface this with saying that I knew the raft scene was coming. I'd never seen the raft scene, but I knew they were all on the raft, and I'm like, okay, so they're gonna die. So I did know this was all coming. So when I saw the canoe, red flags went off instantly. So
you knew personally how that was gonna happen.
Yes, I can't speak because you didn't know that going into it.
No.
Like, I knew the raft scene was coming. Everybody I watch and talk to about horror movies who's seen The Burning, they talk about almost nothing but the raft scene. So I know it exists already, so I know it's coming.
The build up to the scene, it's long. Like, it's a slow build that works really well, because you see them following the canoe, and as they get closer, the canoe gets farther away. It's really well done. And at the beginning, there's 2 things you could think of. One, he's in that fucking canoe, or their friend's dead bodies in the canoe.
Yep.
When you see the canoe, personally, you like these characters as you're following along with them. They're all fun. They're all likable.
Oh, except for one of them.
Yeah, 100%. That was the worst part, that he was on the canoe, because I'm like, oh, fuck. If you were on the canoe, I would hope things go differently, but I know it can't because we're supposed to fucking hate you. But you see the canoe, and I'm like, okay, it could be the girl, and they could freak the fuck out, and then they get off, maybe, and they fucking run around, and then people die one by one or whatever. Some characters could escape, I don't know. As it gets slower and slower, they're like, alright, cool, reach out to the canoe, reach out. I'm like, if you reach out, you're fucked. The way it's filmed, there's no way you're not all gonna die. So, you know, as it's going and they're reaching out slowly, you're thinking to yourself, I don't want him to die. I don't want her to die. I really like him. Fuck Eddie. And that's how the scene's going along. Yeah. And then you have this just like build up of intense like anxiety, like, this is fucked. I wish I could stop this. And then within 10 to 20 seconds, they're all dead.
Yeah, it's ridiculously quick.
So fast. And that's how the scene is perfectly done.
It's so efficient.
Very efficient. What do you think is personally the best kill in the raft scene?
It's the final one.
Final one?
Because it's the makeup for it is fantastic.
I think it's the best makeup in the entire film.
The sound effect is chilling.
Yes.
And the way that is the thing that it's not even, maybe it's not even just the kill itself. It's the final image of her arm hanging over with the blood trailing down it.
I would honestly
really
say
gets me.
I think that's a great final shot, but just the kill itself, I think, is fantastic.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Like,
I mean, that sounds really bad to say, but it's like, as far as like a
crafted, yes.
Produced sequence, ending it on that is a way to end a kill sequence like that. It is so impactful.
I don't know if I'd call him my favorite character, but he's one of my favorite characters. Is Woodstock. He's a Weasley kid who's really nice and shoots the dude in the ass with the pellet gun.
Really funny.
He's really fucking funny. So knowing he's gonna die fucking sucked. Yeah. His hands get chopped. It's a great shot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, that fucking sucks. And then immediately after he dies, the girl dies, gets cut in the fucking head. I'm like, hold on. That was fantastic.
Yes.
You see her just get sliced. You see it open on the head, and she just hits the back. And I'm like, okay, that might be one of the best kills I've ever fucking seen in a movie. That looks fucking awesome.
It's because, like, I think about, because what he uses the entire time is the Hedge Clippers.
Yes.
Pretty much, except for the beginning. And even then, he uses a pair of scissors, which is essentially still a hedge clipper of some kind. But, like, he kills people in multiple different ways with that. Like, just the idea of opening the hedge clippers and swinging them is brilliant. Like, that's a brilliant kill. Like, as far as, like whoever, writing this movie, thinking that up as a kill, that's brilliant, because it's so easy to take hedge clippers and just say, okay, well, we're just gonna stab, or we're just gonna cut. Like, it's very easy to do that. And even towards the end, when he pins Alfred's arm with it so he can't escape, it's really smart. But yeah, ending it on that with the blood trailing down the arm especially, and then the not hard, but like the fade into red. I texted you, I shit you not, my heart was actually pounding in my chest. And I've seen the sequence before. This is not my first time seeing this. but it's just so well crafted. The buildup is perfect, and then the execution, the editing, showing all the makeup effects, every single shot is all framed pretty much perfectly, to the point that even the least convincing effects are so they go by so quickly that you can't even register it. It's ridiculous how just perfect a kill sequence it is almost.
Do you think the raft scene makes the movie peak too soon as far as kills are considered?
I wouldn't say it's too soon, because I guess so technically, just because it's not like that's the finale or anything.
Well, let's go over how many people die.
That is heading towards, I would say, like towards the end of the second act. So it's like it's going into the finale.
There's only about 7 or 8 people that die in the film, and half of them die in that scene.
Yeah, it's multiple bodies dropping really fast.
So before that scene, 2 people die. The prostitute dies, and then the counselor girl dies.
Karen.
Yes.
Yep.
Then those 4 drop. That's 6. After that, we only see it's Sarah, I believe, is her name, and then the bully.
Yeah.
And after that, that's it.
Well, we don't even see her die.
No, we don't even know how she dies.
Yeah, we don't see anything.
How she dies, obviously, because we see
that's fine.
Fighting.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. But I actually really like that sequence because they choose not to reveal that. They don't have to.
I thought it was gonna be some shit like, as he put down the sleeping bag, it'd be like the mouth's all cut up or some shit, like, but they didn't.
I was expecting that, or I was expecting something really fucked up and disturbing that didn't really need to be in there. And especially because it's like doing that after the raft sequence, it's like, it'll give us a little breather. But then I think the kill of the bully is really strong just because it's something that's very earned. Again, I think it's very interesting that the 2 biggest assholes in the movie both die by getting stabbed in the throat. Because they both got big fucking mouths.
I wish they're good deaths, but they're not as, I don't know, like some of the other deaths, like the girl gets sliced in the head, Woodstock gets his fingers cut off. It's like, those are elongated, painful deaths that are not justified for those characters. And those 2 die getting stabbed in the neck. And I'm not saying like they die instantly, but I almost wish it was a little worse because you really fucking hate those 2.
I would say for the bully, it is quite elongated.
Yeah, because he picks him up.
Yeah, he doesn't die quickly. He dies an excruciating death. But yeah, I would say that definitely Eddie's death is not as long as I would expect for a character that they made pretty unlikable.
I think it just comes from, in hindsight, how like as time goes on, we see more of these slasher films. Some of these shitty people get really bad shit happen to them.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, oh, I kind of expect more. It's like, well, the film's in 81. Like, you can't really expect it to be some extravagant murder.
But also at the same time, it's like, I can't complain too much considering just the quality of, like, even if the burning peaks with that rap sequence, which I think most people would probably say it does, because again, most people that I know who've seen the burning would consider that to be one of, if not the greatest kill sequence in a slasher film ever. Even that being the peak or whatever, it still leads to some pretty great sequences.
I think the kills peak in that scene, but the film doesn't peak.
Yeah. I think the finale is
perfectly shot.
Is really strong, not just because of tension, but also because, if like me, you didn't catch the fact that Todd was one of the people in the opening scene, that reveal is going to be pretty powerful. And especially because of the way it affects him when he sees Cropsy.
I think that reveal actually takes a little bit away from me personally.
Yeah.
Only because, the reveal of who it was different, so I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't know it was that guy, but... Yeah.
I think the fact it's kind of like one of those bait and switch things. It's kind of like with Mission Impossible Fallout, where like it's not really a news to anybody that Walker's a bad guy, but it's the real twist is that
they knew it.
They knew it already.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's like the twist isn't that Todd is involved in Cropsy's demise. So the twist is that he was gung-ho about it and wanted to do it. Because they definitely try to fake you out and make you think that it's
the kid with the
glasses.
Yeah, and I like that. That's the best aspect about it. It's just
that's why it doesn't take away too much for me, just because the reveal is kind of not the real
The reveal isn't what takes away. It's the scene and how it builds up about how, like, oh, this, and they talk about it. Just as, like, as he's walking towards it, they're showing all these dead bodies of the counselors, and it's like, I think that's really indulging in itself in a bit.
It's heavy-handed.
It takes a little bit away from me. It doesn't ruin the scene or anything. I just feel like I would have toned it back and not shown the bodies. And I think the way the scene plays out when they talk about it is pretty good. It's just with all of it together, I'm like, that's a little bit too much. I would have taken it a bit back, but that's a small gripe.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really, why it works for me so much is that, and maybe I'm looking into this a little too much, but he walks in there, he's seeing Cropsy with the flamethrower. Oh, we got a flamethrower, we don't know, whatever. But seeing Cropsy, recognizing that it's Cropsy for real, and then seeing the fire is not only reminding him about what he partook in, but also seeing the counselors is reminding him that this is essentially his fault. And I find that all these visions to be a manifestation of guilt in a way, and especially because of his facial expression.
Yes.
You can see this bitter remorse on his face.
When he calls out to Alfred, it's a lot more hesitant as he's seeing things go on.
Yeah, so I like that a lot. It is 100% very heavy-handed.
Yes. I also want to note another thing that takes away from the film is the editing, that some scenes are out of order. There's some times where it's filmed very much, because you see Cropsy in the corner pushing the thing down. If you look, you'll see him there pushing down like the little minecart.
Yeah.
And as that scene takes place, he pushes the minecart, gets out of the way, hits his head or whatever. Cool. Then it follows again with him looking around, and it shows again him at the top with the minecart, and then it shows him looking around still, and there was no minecart next to that same area.
Oh yeah.
That kind of bugged me a bit. I'm like, okay, you guys fucked up. You shouldn't have had this scene in here. Yeah. But that's a little bit of a goof in the movie.
Yeah.
But it was very obvious to me, I guess.
Yeah, it's a very obvious continuity error.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say obvious. I really wasn't paying attention, didn't notice it. But sometimes, honestly, when I'm just like in a movie, I'm not fucking paying attention. And again, like, this isn't a movie that I've seen like a billion times. You know, it's not like I don't know. We haven't talked about it yet, but again, I bring it up every podcast about Halloween. Like, we do Halloween, I can watch it in the background. I don't need to watch the movie to do the podcast. I've watched the movie 50 billion fucking times. Yeah, it's like I don't have to watch every second of it because I've seen every second of it for most of my life. So, but with The Burning, this is only the second time I've actually sat down and watched The Burning. So I'm just remembering, you know, I'm still taken with this movie because I honestly forgot. I didn't know if George Costanza died or not. Like I honestly didn't remember a lot of stuff in this movie.
I thought he was going to, and he didn't.
I got to the end of the movie and I'm like, yes. George Costanza survived, bro. They could have killed literally everybody. As long as George Costanza lives, A-okay with me. That's a lie. That's a lie. I really like Todd. I like his no-nonsense attitude.
Protagonist, and I think the best thing about him is that if he did die, it is somewhat justified, so you can't feel bad. Yeah. You're like, it kind of makes sense, but having Alfred save him at the end is the perfect way of letting him live.
It also kind of brings Alfred, because Alfred's a very meek character.
Yes.
And he's very, I guess, antisocial. I don't know, because especially like when they're getting ready to shoot what's his name in the ass. You know, he's got people around him. Like, it seems like he's making friends, finally.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, I have no friends. And the next scene, all these people are being really nice to him. I was like, are you sure you don't have friends? Or are you just fucking dumb?
Yeah, I just had to
like you pretty well.
I honestly just had to assume that it was, like, the enemy of my enemy. Or not enemy of my enemy, but we don't like him. So we're going to team up with you. We just don't like him.
I don't think it's that. It's just more
but like then they're really nice.
He really fucking hates, I think it's Glazier is the guy's name. Glazier. I think he really fucking hates him, and he's so worried about him, he doesn't want to try and make friends. But as the film, like, that scene happens before, like, oh, I don't have any friends. That happens before they all are being really nice to him and defending him every single time. So it's like, they feel bad for him, like, fuck it, we'll be cool with him. And then they kind of like organically become friends later on in the film.
Yeah, because I feel like once Glazer gets kind of more
Aggressive.
out in the open and aggressive with his attacks on Alfred, everyone's like, hey, fuck you, man.
Yeah.
Stop being a dick. So then he starts to become friends with people, especially after, like, you know, when Glazer throws him in the water because he can't swim, you know, then they're like, oh, we're definitely fucking with this guy. That's fucked up. He could have killed you. So it's
especially
like,
because all the girls don't like him either, except for that one girl.
Yeah. Well, it's like they're all talking about him. We're like, oh, you know, could you imagine all that muscle on top of you or whatever? Like they're all like fawning over him. But
well, I wouldn't say fawning. They're saying it very like disrespectfully.
Well, some of it sounds generally like, you know, like, oh man, a muscular man on top of me. It sounds great. But also, some people are making fun of. Like one of them saying, literally says, I'd rather be with Alfred. I always want to say Alfredo, and I don't know why I want to say Alfredo. But it's like, I'd rather be with Alfred, and it's like, yeah, they're definitely dunking on him at times, but I think they're also feeling like he's an asshole. But you know,
I don't think most of them
at times,
are thinking that.
Not all of them.
I think most of them fucking don't like him.
I mean, I don't blame them, but I still don't understand why what's her name fucking likes him. Like,
everyone has their own personal taste, I guess.
See, that's another thing about this movie, though. We haven't talked about it yet.
What, the nudity and sex and stuff?
No, well, I'm sure we'll get to that, but
well, I don't know if we will. Cause, sorry, we've been going for a long time.
We'll be here for 90 years.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of this where I got kind of part 4 syndrome because for some of the sexual related stuff,
like the male gaze stuff.
Not necessarily the male gaze stuff, but you know, like obviously Eddie's very predatorial, and this movie's written and produced by both Weinsteins.
Yeah, look, I mean, we kind of have to talk about that too.
I don't want to dive into it and being like, oh, this is like they're self-inserting themselves into this movie or something. I don't want to get down and try to analyze it like that. It just feels really weird, and like I don't want to ding the movie for it, but at the same time, it's like you have to kind of discuss that because not just Eddie, but Glazer's also rather predatorial.
Well, they're both forceful. Like they're not.
Yeah, because there's multiple times I'm blanking on her name, but multiple times she's saying no.
Yeah.
She's saying I don't want to, or not now.
Yeah.
And he's still fucking with her. It's to the point where when they actually have sex, it sounds like she's saying don't have sex with me.
I think it's more hinted at she's disappointed, and they definitely go into that later on.
Definitely the disappointment part, but it sounds like as the camera's going up the sleeping bag, it sounded like to me, and maybe I just misunderstood what was going on, but it sounded like she was saying, Glazer, no, like I don't want to do this right now.
I don't remember her saying no, and I'm not gonna defend the shitty fucking bully that I hate in the movie. I'm not saying that he's not a fucking sexual predator. He clearly is, because he hits at times being like, yeah, you know, you're gonna like it's gonna be real good. Which, first of all, never fucking sleep with anybody that says it's gonna be real good.
Yeah, anytime a guy has the confidence to tell you it's gonna be good, I guarantee you it's probably gonna be the worst sex of your life. It's probably gonna be the worst sex of your life.
But I don't think the scene is meant to be read that way. I don't remember her saying no. I remember her saying oh, but not no.
It just sounded to me like she was not in the mood.
Well, she wasn't in the mood. I could tell that much. But it's I don't think it's meant to be like he's like raping her as much as she's just not comfortable, and like it's very much like this sucks, this is not cool at all, this is not fun. And she thought it would be like, oh, it's gonna be kind of fun, kind of sexy, romantic, and it's like this guy is a fucking loser and he just is just humping me, and then he comes in 2 seconds and now I hate my fucking life. Sex is terrible with this dude.
He talks such a big game and he's a 3-pump chump.
And you know, when he's talking to her about having sex, it's so weird that like this fucking douchebag is a lot nicer than Eddie about it. Like, he's bad, but like Eddie's fucking terrible.
Well, it seems
I fucking hate Eddie more than any character in Friday. I mean, any of them.
They do make a point to say, you know, the girl that Eddie's with is like, well, no, not even just that, but she's like, you know, I always hear you talking about all the girls you sleep with.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. And he says, you know, if we like each other, we like each other. So he's basically not denying that she's kind of just another check off for him.
Yeah.
So, but the difference is that to some degree, it seems like Glazer actually likes Sarah.
Yeah.
Like actually does like her, but he's just a fucking douchebag.
He's also very much like the way he plays off is like, yeah, I like it, and like I want to have sex with you, and if you don't, like I'll wait. Like I'm gonna try to, but like
I'll wait, but I won't like it.
Yeah. Like,
which is also
first of
not
all,
good.
That's not good. He's
Not
not
okay.
likable. And like I said, I'm not defending the fucking terrible bully.
No.
But this guy's like a 6 out of 10 for the shit scale when it comes to women. Oh, I'll go 7 out of 10. Let's be real. He's a fucking piece of shit. But like Eddie's a 12 out of 10. Eddie's the type of guy where it's like, hey, if you talk to him, you're fucked. This guy is gonna ruin your fucking life. You'll actually die. You'll get Hedge Clippers in the fucking neck. So, you know, stay away from him.
Yeah.
And I've never seen in a film where like two like kids are getting ready to have sex, the girl pushes him away, and he fucking flips out. You know he was gonna actually try to fucking hit her, and throws a fucking fit about it. I've never seen that in a slasher film, especially like a camp slasher. So when I saw this happening, I was like, no way, dude. Fuck that guy.
And especially especially after that, when he's sleeping in the sleeping bag, and the two lead counselors come up to him.
He's such a dick about it.
For some reason, I'm blanking on the other one's name.
Todd and Michelle.
Michelle. When she comes up to him, and is like, you know, you probably scared the shit out of her. She probably ran away. And like, I can see people being like, oh, you're just being uptight. But she's fucking right, dude. Like, she has every right to fucking say that. Like, it completely makes sense. Like, earlier on in the movie, they kind of set her up as a kind of high-strung person.
Yes,
and
but
I feel
she's
like
also very defensive about her girls.
Yes, but I would argue maybe that the script kind of portrays her as being an asshole because of that.
Oh, like negatively?
Yes.
I think it's
a little bit.
A
little bit.
And
I don't really like that, especially because both times that she gets angry at people, it's very justified.
Yeah,
very justified.
The biggest problem with the burning is the subtext is a lot of male dominance.
Yeah.
We're supposed to side with Todd over her every single time, but realistically, Todd's kind of in the wrong. Do we know that Alfred didn't mean it, and well, first of all, as the film goes on, I think it's more hinted at Alfred was just like oddling Sarah and like really liked her, and he was being a bit of a fucking creep about it.
Yeah, I think it's very clear that I don't think he's lying necessarily that he wanted to fuck with Sarah to fuck with Glazer to a degree, but also at the same time, like they make it very clear that he's interested in her and doesn't like Glazer because he thinks Glazer's an asshole and she deserves better.
Yes.
But the problem is that he's an antisocial person and he doesn't understand, I guess, boundaries and understand that he's being a fucking creep.
Yeah, and he doesn't really get any justified action for that besides people making fun of him, which isn't a justified action because they're not making fun of him for that. They're just making fun of them because they're fucking douchebags. Yeah. And the way the film plays out, it's like, you know, we gotta like Alfred. He's a nice guy, and it's like, I really wish he wasn't the guy in that first scene because it's really hard to like someone when they do that shit. Alfred is likable, but that first scene really hurts, and no one's addressing that besides Todd and Michelle. And you're right, Michelle is portrayed negatively. She's high-strung, and in both these instances, we can agree, she's fucking right.
Yeah, like, she's completely right.
And he should get the shit kicked out of him. He's a fucking douchebag.
Like, 100%.
It's not out of the realm to believe he would have raped her.
Yes.
Let's fucking kill Eddie.
The thing that I'll say about Alfred, though, I don't even know how to say this because it's gonna sound like I'm defending him for what he's doing, and I'm not trying to defend him. But that's not something that was abnormal for teenage boys, and that doesn't make it.
Sure.
Yes, it doesn't make it okay at all. Don't get me wrong. It does not make it okay.
Also,
it's
for the
100% not okay.
The way he's portrayed, there's more of a justified reason to it versus a scummy background reason.
Yeah, he's not doing it necessarily to be
a peeping Tom.
Yes. That being said, he definitely deserved a punishment for that.
That's
a real punishment for that.
And the reason he's not punished is because you could tell the filmmakers were like, it's no big deal.
Well, yeah, because it's like this movie's idea of that is boys will be boys.
Yes.
And that's not okay. You know, I'm not trying to defend Alfred at all because that's a bad thing to do. You don't do that shit. It's disgusting.
Yes.
At the same time, when you look at someone with the background that they set him up to be, in a lot of movies that a lot of people enjoyed in the 80s, they did worse.
Oh, 100%.
And they were assholes about it. And people still said, oh, that character's cool.
Yeah.
Again, also does not justify it. But you know,
it's of its time period is what you're
yes.
getting at, and I agree.
It's of its time period, and also, again, I don't really know how to phrase it without it sounding like I'm defending him, because it's like I feel bad for him in certain regards.
Yes.
For the way that he's treated and the way that he's looked at by people, but also at the same time, you can say that and be like, well, I like the guy. He just needs to learn from this kind of shit.
It also helps that we don't actually see what happens in the scene.
Yes.
So you could leave up your own decision in your head about how it really goes down. And I would agree.
I just have to assume that he was standing outside of the shower.
I just have to say, like, it feels like the filmmakers do not take it seriously, and it has to be addressed, and you're right about that when we were talking about it in the first place. It's just these other characters that do shit like that are much worse. Like the way Eddie's eyeing Karen in the beginning, it's like, this is kind of fucking uncomfortable, and I really don't like it. And it's more uncomfortable when he fucking is a real douchebag, and that character is just tough to get through. He is really, and like he's supposed to be bad, but he's too much sometimes, and I get fucking sick of it.
Yeah, and they make you wait for him to die too. They make you wait.
And it sucks because like he dies with 3 other characters that either you like or you're indifferent to. Like, I really fucking like Woodstock. I like the other boy in the back who's also part of the gang having fun fucking with Glazier. So knowing I'm gonna see these 2 guys die that I really fucking like next to this piece of shit just takes away from it. Like, I don't want them to die, but if they die, I want it to be fast, and I want that motherfucker to suffer. And then it's like, 100%. It doesn't really happen that way. It's a great scene, and I wouldn't change the scene, but it does kind of suck that piece of shit just like it gets stabbed in the throat a little bit, and fuck him.
Yeah, it is kind of awkward to watch this movie and have someone like Alfred be one of the protagonists, and they do try to make you feel bad for him.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of it is justified feeling bad for him. I mean, like, there's no excuse for bullying. You know, you're a piece of shit if you bully people. Just don't fucking do that. But, you know, the problem is that the movie doesn't tackle the issue. And I also still have to pose the question, like, what was he hoping to, if what he's saying is correct, if he's not lying and say, and he wasn't just there to look at a naked woman, and he was there to scare her to get back at Glazier, what does that actually do? Really, honestly, nothing.
I don't.
Scaring her? Like, what the fuck does that do to get back at Glazier? It makes no sense.
Well, you could also say he's trying to scare her just because he likes her, and a lot of guys pick on girls they like because they're fucking stupid.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that and he's the type of guy that, like, maybe he's like, I'm gonna fuck with her, and then as he gets closer, he kind of just fucking freezes. Like, there's a lot of ways you can see how the scene transpires. It doesn't matter. It's not right. It's wrong. He does other things that happens to him as the film goes on that we feel bad for. It's just, that's a tough start to get through when he's supposed to be one of your protagonists.
Because that's the first meeting for Alfred, it sets a bad precedent for that character.
It does, 100%.
They do kind of rehabilitate that image as it goes on, but they never attack the initial problem, which is a thing that kind of irritates me, because that is a kind of gross thing for someone to do.
Well, it's
not
worse.
It is gross.
It's worse when he's like watching them when fucking Glazier's like trying to get her to have sex before, and she's like, not right here, and he's veering at them again. I'm like, dude, you gotta stop with this shit. Like, the first time was bad, but like, it's kind of hard to like him right now.
Yeah, the voyeuristic aspect, like, I guess,
because it comes back, he only finds Glazier because he's like, oh, I bet I know what he's gonna do.
The whole point, like, I get probably what they're trying to do is he's watching out for her.
Sure.
But at the same time, like, it doesn't feel like that. It feels more like stalking.
It does feel like stalking.
I mean, it doesn't just, it is basically stalking. Yeah. So it doesn't, the problem is like, I get the intent, but also it's not portrayed that way visually.
That's the problem with, it's tough because, like, I even said earlier, like, him saving Todd is the perfect way to let Todd feel like he deserves to live. But at the same time, like, if you're really looking at Alfred's character, it's like, he is just doing some terrible shit and he's getting away with it, no problem. Yeah. I'm not saying he should die, but, like, it's not going to be addressed. The filmmakers are not telling you it's a bad thing, and that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's weird. Like, if you want to consider it a real problem, I think you really can and make a big case for it. Yeah. And it takes away a little bit. But I also think that might only be the real big problem in the movie.
Yeah, like that's one of the only things in the movie where I'm like, a lot of our issues that we've discussed are little minor quibbles.
Yes.
That is something that is like a legitimate, like they tried to give this as one of our protagonists.
Yeah.
And they make him do something that's pretty nasty at the beginning of the movie.
And have other scenes that follow through with that.
Again, it's not even just that he does this thing, it's our literal introduction to the character, and they never bring it up again, pretty much. So it feels like we kind of set up maybe an arc of some kind that kind of doesn't get followed through on. And
I don't even think they set up an arc. I think they set up a character trait that they follow through with the voyeurism, and that's worse.
Yeah, so it's like you're supposed to feel bad for this character and follow him and feel triumphant when he takes down Cropsey.
And follow him, follow her.
Yeah. So it doesn't that's the biggest problem in the movie easily, I would say. Out of anything.
I think we've gone on for quite a bit.
There's one more thing that I wanted to say though.
Okay,
I wanted to ask you how you felt about Cropsey's design.
He looks
a lot
like
of people
Nemesis.
don't. A lot of people are. Yeah, a lot. I know a lot of people who are like, "Oh man, the movie's fantastic." When they reveal Cropsey, though, it takes a bit of a dip for me.
I think the makeup doesn't look as fantastic as I wanted it to, and the biggest problem is fucking dumbass like Scream Factory is they show you the designs on these covers when you buy them. I haven't watched the movie before, so I bought the movie. I'm like, well, I know what he's gonna fucking look like now, and that cover is really fucking cool. And when he looks like that, he looks like he's got fucking cheese pizza on his face and looks a little bit worse. So that was a little bit tough.
I instantly flipped around the artwork. I like the poster art better.
I honestly haven't looked at the other side.
The poster art, I love the poster art.
Yeah, that one's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I agree. That's kind of weird.
They always do it. They did it for The Howling too. Like their covers ruin the movies if you haven't seen them.
Sometimes, yeah.
Like a lot of the time. For American Werewolf, the Arrow does. It shows the entire transformation. So if you haven't seen it, it's awesome. It's an awesome cover. I love that cover. But if I hadn't seen the movie, it ruins a lot of the fucking.
I would, however, argue though that most people, if they're gonna watch American Werewolf in London, they've seen clips of that transformation sequence.
But look at the original poster. You get nothing out of it except for it's a werewolf movie. And that's,
I don't disagree.
That's what these I don't know. Like, you should not have this cover be the cover that it sells in. It should be.
Yeah, it should have been the other one. Yeah.
Like you could say, hey, it comes with it, but if I saw this is the cover right here, I technically don't know what he looks like. I don't know what's going on. I just know this motherfucker's cutting grass.
Also, kind of funny that you're holding that up. It kind of reminds me of The Thing because it's like where his head's supposed to be. The light flies out. Pretty cool.
Thing's another perfect example. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I also wouldn't. I don't want to drag this on too much longer than we have already because we've been talking about this for a long time. We did talk about before the show that we wanted to mention Madman. So
mention it.
Madman. Yeah, Madman sucks. But anyways, the kind of cool thing about Madman and The Burning is they're both supposed to be Cropsey stories. Madman Mars was supposed to be Cropsey originally, and these movies were being made at the same time. But The Burning acquired Cropsey as a IP, I guess. Yeah. So they couldn't. So they had to make their own character with Madman Mars.
Technically, is the only good thing about the movie.
No, the theme song is the only thing.
But the theme song is
obviously because of that. Yeah, obviously because of Madman.
The backstory with the theme song is all built on the fact that they couldn't do that. Is the movie terrible? Yes, the movie fucking sucks. But that theme song, pretty fucking cool.
I saw Madman first.
I did too,
obviously. If I saw The Burning first, it would have looked even worse.
Well, I watched Madman because I read the comic by Michael Alred, and the font is very similar. And I was
but also the cover's pretty cool too.
The cover, the poster is sick. And I'm like, okay, did he just take the font from this movie? Like, is there any similarities to it that gets hinted at? First of all, no, there's no similarities at all.
Yeah.
Great comic, by the way. But second of all, I was like, oh, it's also horror. I see it a lot in like the fucking schlocky, I think Vinegar Syndrome has a copy of it.
It's either them or Blue Underground. I can't remember.
So I was like, cool, I want to check it out. I saw it, I fucking hated it. That's the end of the story.
Wait, did you buy the movie?
Fuck no, it's on Shudder for a while.
Oh, I blanked for a second because I thought you said like, oh, they got a Vinegar Cinder Blu-ray, and I'm like,
I've
did
seen
you buy
it
the
multiple
Blu-ray?
times at like the cons we go for the horror conventions.
Yeah, I was just I'm like, you spent money on that movie?
I would not be against owning it because it'd be like
it was
another.
cheap.
It'd be part of a collection. I think
if
that's
it
one of
was
those
cheap,
shitty
yeah.
movies you own and be like, yeah, but it's important and it makes sense to be in a collection.
And maybe the special features are cool. But I just wanted to bring up Madman because they were supposed to be both Cropsy movies and they came out the same year, and they kind of raced to do a Cropsy movie and they couldn't do it for Madman. So I found that very interesting that for some reason we got two of those. It's kind of like how we got Olympus Has Fallen and
White
House Down, two Die Hard and a White House movies in the same year.
There's one thing I'm gonna say. I don't want to go into it because I know we'll talk about it for a long time. Is I think the music's fantastic.
Yes, it is. 100%.
Music is fantastic.
I was thinking the same thing.
I had to talk about it. I heard it. I'm like, this is really good. There's some scenes where I'm like, this sounds kind of like Power Rangers with the way it like uplifts, and I'm like, it's kind of neat, but
the banjo.
The synth is really fucking fantastic, and we don't need to go into it besides saying the soundtrack is fucking not soundtrack. The score is fucking great.
The only thing I'll say is that the banjo music fits here better than it does in part 2 of Friday, in my opinion. When they're canoeing, I like it better.
Yeah.
So that's all I wanted to say. Because I made a point to mention that in the Friday movie review. So
yeah.
All right. Well, we talked about this for fucking
we need to go
long enough,
thoughts.
boys.
It's been a long time. You go first.
This movie, if it weren't for Alfred, I would probably say this is pretty much as close to a perfect slasher movie as I've ever seen. It is definitely, I would say, top 10 slasher movies of all time easily. I would be close to saying top 5. I think this movie's fantastic. You know, Alfred, they don't stick the landing on that, but the kills are fucking awesome. The rap scene is an all-timer. The characters are a blast, and all the actors are doing a great job. We're having a great time watching them. The camp setting's great. I love camp slashers. I feel like we don't get enough of them. You know, it's funny, we had a whole Friday the 13th franchise, but it feels like not very many of them feel like camp movies.
Honestly, half of them aren't it, though.
Exactly.
Most
So
of
it's
them
like
aren't camp films.
It's like most of the camp slashers I've seen are like this, Madman, and the fucking Sleepaway Camp movies. It's like there should be more of these, and Fear Street too. But like there should be more camp slashers. This shit's fire. I love this movie. 9.5.
Okay.
9.5, bro.
Right off the bat.
9.5.
That's fair. After watching this movie and talking about it more and more, I'm more set in my sense of saying I still haven't gotten my perfect slasher film. My perfect camp slasher for sure, because Alfred takes away from it, talking more about the character. Going into it, I wasn't thinking about it as much, but as we talk about it more, I knew there's a reason that him being in the end didn't sit right with me. And I always felt like if he died, I wouldn't feel too bad. And I'm like, why is that? I think he's a good character. Oh.
I thought he was going to die, honestly.
He does this bad shit. Fear Street, you know, I talked about how a lot of the implements in that are like the perfect camp slasher. I do think the killings take away from that. They're not that great. They're an afterthought most of the film.
Yeah, they're all just axe cutting.
And now it sits in my mind more. I wish I had the perfect camp slasher. And there's so many implements, and The Burning has so many good implements to put in towards camp slashers. The characters are phenomenal. They're so much fun. I wish Eddie fucking died worse, though.
I would say that this is about as close as I've seen to a perfect camp slasher.
I love, biasly, a lot of the stuff in part 2. The Jason in part 2 is interesting, but he's not nearly as interesting as other films. Yeah. I think Cropsy might be a little bit more interesting than Jason in part 2. The characters are better in this movie. Some of them I wish had worse deaths. Some of them I wish I had more screen time with.
Some of them I wish didn't die at all.
Yes, of course, but I knew they had to. It's a slasher film. I would have liked to have more screen time with the boys having more fun, because there's so much fucking fun in the movie. But it is what it is. There's a lot of great implements in this film. The soundtrack is great. The fucking killings are great. The cast is great. The cinematography is fantastic.
Yeah, it looks great.
Everything about this is just so much fucking energy, and you really get attached to this film as it goes along. And I think it's a great film. I think 9.5 is a pretty fair score to give it. I will only give it a 9 because some of the editing in the final act takes away from it for me. There's a few continuity errors that slightly bug me. Alfred really does take away the more I think about it. There should have been more just desserts for these fucking manipulative, shitty fucking boyfriend characters that aren't taken as seriously. And that weighs it down a bit, but it's still a fucking 9 out of 10. It's still a fantastic movie.
I'm so glad that you finally sat down and watched this, because I knew when I kept on telling you to watch it that I knew you were gonna love this movie.
Oh, it's awesome.
It's just straight up your alley. Like it's literally pretty much mostly everything that I know you like in slasher movies, especially.
Oh, for sure.
So it's like I knew as soon as I'm like, you need to watch The Burning. Like, you don't understand. You need to watch The Burning, and I'm so glad that we finally got you to sit down and watch that.
I think the first act is better only because I love the character work, and after the killings start happening, a lot of the character work kind of cuts out.
Yeah, it goes mostly to stalking, killing.
And I wish there was more of that thrown in there. I think Friday does that a little bit better, is that when the killer comes in, there's still character stuff going on. So
yeah, I would agree.
But this film is better crafted. It's more focused. It's more straightforward.
I think you could flip side that and say, like, they drop a lot of character stuff, but I think that once the killings start, the pace gets relentless.
I agree.
And I think that definitely adds to the tension a lot. But I also see the other side of the coin pretty easily.
So yeah. I think that covers this episode. We now know what we're going to do for the next episode. We were very up in the air about it, but I had mentioned before how I'd been watching all the Puppet Master films. And now Mike is willing to watch the first one.
This will be interesting.
I have a lot to say, and I have a lot of questions to ask you during that episode, and I hope people are excited to see that, because I think it's going to be a pretty good one.
Jokes aside, the puppets are fucking cool, man, so they look fucking sick.
We will see how you feel about that statement as the film finishes next week. Okay. So, to check that out on your own, come by next week. We'll talk about Puppet Master. We'll have a great time. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.